Hi everyone, welcome back. In this lecture, we're going to see how we can quickly build the CRUD REST APIs in a Spring Boot application using ChatGPT. Well, whenever you work on real-time Spring Boot application, then you typically have a requirement to develop the REST APIs, right? If you start building REST APIs by typing the code line by line, then it will take a lot of time. So instead of that, what we can do is we can take the help from ChatGPT to quickly get the source code of the CRUD REST APIs for any resource or any entity. Let us say you are working on e-commerce project and you have a requirement to develop the CRUD REST APIs for product entity. Then what typically you do is you create a product entity and then product repository, and then you develop the service layer and then controller layer. Within that you implement the CRUD REST APIs, and then you configure the database details in application.properties file. So you will do a lot of stuff, right? So instead of that, what we can do is we can take the help from ChatGPT and we can quickly get that all the code instantly. We don't have to spend a lot of time by doing it manually. Okay, so here I have created the prompt. So this is basically a generic prompt that we can use to quickly create the CRUD REST APIs for any entity or any resource. So let us quickly go through this prompt, and then later we will use this prompt in ChatGPT to generate the CRUD REST APIs. Okay, so here let us begin with the prompt. Act as a professional Java Spring Boot developer. Well, this line basically tells the ChatGPT the role we are giving to the ChatGPT. Like we are telling ChatGPT that act as a professional Java Spring Boot developer, and then based on our requirement, develop the CRUD REST APIs. Next, I want to generate a complete Spring Boot application using Java 21 that implements CRUD REST APIs for a resource, and then here we can give the resource name or the entity name over here. Well, here I have given the Spring Boot version 3.4, but you can give any Spring Boot version that you want. For example, 3.5, 3.6, or let us say in future Spring Boot 4 releases, then you can give Spring Boot 4 as well. And here I have specified Java 21, and if you want to use Java 8, Java 17, Java 21, Java 25, you can give the version as per your requirement. So if you are working on existing project and that project sometime uses the older version of Java, so you can mention that version over here. And here is a placeholder with entity name. So here you can give any entity name that you want. For example, if you are working on e-commerce project, then you can mention entity name as product or order or payment or inventory. Okay, and if you are working on existing project and if you have a requirement to build the CRUD REST APIs for any resource or entity, that you can mention over here. Okay, next we need to provide the project setup. So based on your requirement, you can mention the Java version, Spring Boot version, and the build tool. So here we are going to use Maven, but if you have a requirement to use Gradle, you can mention over here. Okay, and also make sure that you mention the Spring Boot version and Java version as per your requirement. Next, add the dependencies. Well, in order to build the REST APIs, we typically use Spring Boot Starter Web dependency, and in order to develop the repository layer or a DAO layer, we use spring-boot-starter-data-jpa dependency. It internally uses Hibernate. And here you can mention the database that you want to use. For example, if you are using MySQL, then you can mention MySQL database over here, or if you are using PostgreSQL database, that you can mention over here. So whatever the database you are using, you can mention over here. And then lombok. Lombok is optional. Either you can use lombok or Java records. So nowadays most of the developers prefer using records, so you can ignore lombok and use records. Next, entity and data layer. So here we are telling ChatGPT to create a JP entity for this entity name, and here we give the fields. For example, if you want to create a JP entity for product, you can mention product over here and then product fields. For example, product ID, product name, product description, product created date. Okay, so as per your requirement, you can mention all these details over here. Let us say if you are working on healthcare application, then you can give entity name like patient, and you can give patient related fields over here like patient ID, patient name, patient address, age, etc. So basically this prompt is a generic. You can just replace the placeholders with your values. as per your requirement. That's it. Next, use Jakarta persistence annotations. Next, use Jakarta persistence annotations. Well, sometimes ChatGPT uses the deprecated code or the legacy code. That's why I have explicitly mentioned where to use the annotation from this package. So earlier, the Jakarta.persistence API was named as javax.persistence. Later on, the Jakarta has renamed this package name as Jakarta.persistence. Okay, and all these JPA related annotations are basically kept under this package. That's why I have explicitly mentioned this package name over here, so that these annotations can be imported from this package. Sometimes ChatGPT uses javax.persistence, but we want the latest jakarta.persistence package. Next, create entity name repository interface extending JpaRepository. So whatever the entity name that you give, it will create the repository with that name and then extends JpaRepository. For example, product repository interface extends JpaRepository. Next comes service layer. So here we are taking example as a product. So create a product service interface with standard CRUD methods, and then create product service interface implementing this product interface, and then use add service annotation. So don't use Java based configuration, use annotation based configuration, and for this service use add service annotation. Next, handle resource not found exception where needed. Well, typically we use this custom exception to handle the use cases like, let us say a product with a given ID is not existing in database, then we can throw this exception. Next, controller layer implementation. So here we are telling ChatGPT to create the controller. In our example, we are using product. So create product controller annotated with add rest controller annotation and add request mapping annotation with this base URL. So this is the base URL for this controller, and this base URL will applicable to all the REST APIs that we implement within this controller. Okay, and here you can see the placeholder with entity plural. So entity plural is basically a products. So we typically use the entity name in a plural in the URL. That's why entity plural. For example, the products, all the letters in a lowercase. We'll see once we use this prompt in the ChatGPT. Next, implement REST endpoints. So these are the REST endpoints that we want to implement. So we are asking ChatGPT to generate the code for these REST endpoints. And look at the URL /API/ and then placeholder with entity plural. So for example here /API/products. So this is for get all products REST API, and then /API/products and then ID. This is for get one, that is get single product by ID REST API. And then similarly to create the product, update the product and delete the product. So this is the standard URL that we basically use. If you want to maintain the version, you can explicitly mention the version over here. For example, /API/v1. v1 is basically a version, and then /entity plural, that is products. Next, use add path variable, add request body and proper HTTP status codes. And then exception handling. So here we are telling ChatGPT to create resource not found exception class, and then create a global exception handler with REST controller advice annotation and exception handler. So implementing exception handling is very important in REST APIs. So we are telling ChatGPT to generate the source code for exception handling as well. And then configuration. So we are telling ChatGPT to configure the MySQL database in our Spring Boot application. If you want to use different database like PostgreSQL database or S2 database, then you can simply replace this MySQL with whatever the database name that you want. Next, if you want to use S2 database, then you can enable S2 console in the application.properties file. Next, additional expectations. So we are telling ChatGPT to follow the layered architecture, that is 3-layer architecture: controller layer, service layer and repository layer. So this is the standard project structure or the packaging structure we typically follow in a real world projects, right? And then we are telling ChatGPT to use response entity to build the HTTP response for the REST APIs. And then we are telling ChatGPT to return the standard status codes like 200, 201, 204, 404 for the REST APIs. Next, use lombok annotations if applicable. If you are using lombok, then you can mention this instruction, otherwise you can skip this one. And next we are telling ChatGPT to use the latest best practices, avoid deprecated APIs. So we are telling ChatGPT to follow all the best practices and avoid using deprecated methods or the classes. So this is the generic single prompt that we can use to build CRUD REST APIs that follows the industry standard best practices. Next, let us copy this prompt and let us replace the placeholders as per our requirement, and then we'll execute the prompt and then we'll see how ChatGPT generate the response. So let me copy this prompt to one of the editor. So let me use the IntelliJ IDEA as an editor, and here we are just going to replace the placeholders as per our requirement. For example, here we have an entity name. Let us say we are working on the e-commerce project and we want to build the CRUD REST APIs for product entity. Then we can replace this entity name with product, right? So here, instead of manually replacing all the entity name placeholders, what we can do is we can just go to editor and then search for find and replace. So this feature is also available in most of the editors. You can just find and replace. So here, instead of this entity name, we just give the product. So make sure that you give the curly braces over here. Next, click on replace all, and notice here the placeholder is replaced with product. Next, let us quickly go to the prompt and let us see the placeholders. So here, create a JPA entity named product with fields. So here we need to mention all the product related fields. For example, ID, and then product name, and then product description, and then created a date, and then price. You can give any number of fields that you want. To keep it simple, we just give 1 2 3 4 5 fields over here, and then just search for the placeholder again. Here we can see entity plural. So here just copy this placeholder and here just paste it and then give the entity plural products all in a small letter. Okay, and just click on replace all, and now you can see the base URL /API/products/API products. Okay, now it looks good. Next, just scroll down and just check for the placeholders. So there are 3 placeholders. First is the entity name, second is the field list, third is the entity plural. That's it. Now this prompt looks good. Next, let us go ahead and execute this prompt in the ChatGPT and let us see how ChatGPT generate the source code. Well, this is the standard prompt, and you can use this prompt not only in ChatGPT, but you can also use this prompt in a Google Gemini and GitHub Copilot as well as Cloud AI. Alright, great. Next, let us copy this prompt. Let us go to the ChatGPT. So here I'm going to first show you how we can use this prompt in the free version of ChatGPT. Well, this prompt works in both free version of ChatGPT, also paid version of ChatGPT. But the difference is that paid version of ChatGPT is quite faster and provides the accurate information, and the free version of ChatGPT also provides the accurate information, but it is a bit slow due to high traffic. Okay, we will see in both the versions. So first let us execute the prompt in the ChatGPT free version. So here I'm going to just paste the prompt in the chat and then submit the prompt. So this is the ChatGPT 5, and look at here the response: thinking longer for better answer. So ChatGPT internally uses different models and algorithms to produce the response. So look at the response over here: Spring Boot product CRUD project files. So this is basically a document format. It has all the source code that is generated by ChatGPT. So ChatGPT not only generates the source code, but it also provides the project structure. This is a standard project structure that we follow. And as per our prompt, the ChatGPT generates this project structure over here. And then scroll down, and this is the pom.xml file of our Spring Boot application. So as per the dependencies that we have mentioned in the prompt, ChatGPT has given the dependencies over here. As we mentioned to use the MySQL database, that's why you can see MySQL JDBC driver over here. And then we have mentioned the lombok. So in the prompt you can see we have given the lombok or records. So ChatGPT basically uses lombok. If you don't want to use a lombok, then you can just remove from the prompt. And then scroll down. This is the main entry point of our Spring Boot application. This is the product JP entity, and notice here the annotations are from jakarta.persistence package. If you don't mention Jakarta persistence in the prompt, then ChatGPT sometimes give the package name as javax persistence. Okay. Next, you can see lombok annotations, and then these are the fields, and then spring-boot-starter-data-jpa repository, and then product service interface with CRUD methods, and then product service IMPL class that implements product service interface, and it is annotated with add service annotation. And here it is using constructor based dependency injection. And this is the product request DTO class. And this is the resource not found custom exception that extends runtime exception. And this is the global exception handler. It will handle the resource not found exception, method argument not valid exception, and the generic exception. And then scroll down, and here you can see product controller, and the product controller is generated partially. So due to the maximum capacity of this document or the response of the ChatGPT, we cannot see all the source code of this product controller. But what we can do is we can just copy the source code in somewhere, and you can see the complete source code of this product controller. For example, you can also download. So let me first copy this and go to the editor, and here let me paste it and go at the bottom, and here you can see product controller, and then get all products, get single product, create product, update product, delete product. So these are the REST APIs for product entity or a product resource. Next, scroll down, and here you can see application.properties file. This is the configuration for MySQL database. This is the configuration for H2 database. If you want to use H2 database, then just uncomment this code. Okay, so this is how ChatGPT generates the code. You don't have to manually type the code entirely. You can take the help from ChatGPT, and you can quickly copy this code in your project so that you can save your time and boost your productivity. And again, if you want any changes in this code, you can also add the follow-up questions to the ChatGPT. For example, let us say you don't want to use the lombok and you want to use the modern Java records. Then what you can do is you can ask the ChatGPT the follow-up question. For example, go to the ChatGPT over here, and here let us ask ChatGPT, instead of lombok, please use Java records for DTO classes. Alright, next submit the prompt, and let us see how ChatGPT provides the response. So you can see the pop-up over here, document may exceed maximum length. The document might be longer than a canvas can currently handle. To edit, please reduce the length. Okay, no worries, we can just copy or we can download and we can get all the source code. You can see ChatGPT generating the code. So let us wait a minute so that we can completely see the response. Alright, the ChatGPT response has completed. Let us quickly go through the code now. Project structure, and then pom.xml file, and here you can see there is no lombok dependency. Well, we have told ChatGPT to not use the lombok and use the Java records. That's why ChatGPT has removed the lombok dependency from over here. Next, this is the entry point class, and then product entity, and again the product entity don't have any lombok annotations. ChatGPT generated getter setter methods over here. Scroll down, and here you can see product request is the Java record. Next, product repository, product service sample class, and then resource not found custom exception, and then global exception handler, product controller. Due to the maximum capacity of the document, complete source code is not visible over here, but we can get the complete code by using this copy button, or we can download. So just click on copy and go to one of the editor and just paste it. You can see the complete code. You can also download this as a PDF document or a Microsoft Word document or a Markdown document. Well, we can also ask ChatGPT to create a brand new Spring Boot Maven project and include all this source code and download it as a zip file so that we can unzip and import in IntelliJ IDEA. Okay, so let us ask that. So here let us ask ChatGPT, create a Spring Boot Maven project as zip file and include all the above code so that I can import the project in IntelliJ IDEA, or you can use any ID that you want. Just submit the prompt and let us see how ChatGPT provides a response. And you can see the analyzing over here. Just expand it and here you can see the Python code. So ChatGPT behind the scenes writing the Python code to create the Spring Boot application and include all the above source code. You can see the project name, product API, and it is creating the directories as a package names using pom.xml file content, product entity. Alright, so ChatGPT behind the scenes writing the Python code to create this project as a zip file. You can see all the Python code over here. This looks awesome, right? And then here you can see the link. We can click on this link and we can download this project as a zip file. Just click on this link and you can see product API zip file is downloaded. Next, open this zip file in a folder and then extract. And here you can see pom.xml file and then src main resources. This is the application.properties file. And then this is the package name and then this is the code. So this is how we can ask ChatGPT to generate the source code, and if you want the source code in a separate project as a zip file, you can ask that as well. Now we have seen how to use free version of ChatGPT to generate the code. Next, what we'll do, we'll use paid version of ChatGPT with the same prompts and we will see how paid version of ChatGPT generate the response. Well, as I mentioned earlier, ChatGPT paid version is quite faster and provides some more information in the response. That's why most of the developers or the people use ChatGPT paid version because it is a bit faster. So pre version takes a lot of time due to high traffic. Okay, next, here let me copy this prompt. Okay, and let me go to the ChatGPT paid version. So this is the ChatGPT paid version and it has different options like we can use ChatGPT 5, auto mode, instant mode, thinking mode, or we can use the legacy models like GPT 4o. So ChatGPT paid version has all these options. In the new chat, just paste the prompt and then submit this prompt and wait for the response. And you can see thinking longer for better answer. So ChatGPT 5 has an option like it will take some time to think about the request and it will produce the response. You can see the steps: preparing code and guide, and then finalizing entity and dependencies. In free version, we haven't seen these steps, isn't it? And you can see thought for 23 seconds. And then it is generating the code now. Just wait a minute so that we can completely see the response of the ChatGPT. Alright, the ChatGPT response has completed. Let us quickly go through the code now. The project setup, it has pom.xml file. And as we mentioned the lombok, it has added lombok dependency. And then we have mentioned to use MySQL driver. So it is added over here. If you want to use PostgreSQL database, you can just comment out this MySQL and then use PostgreSQL. Similarly for H2 database. Scroll down and here you can see product entity with jakarta.positions as a package. And then product repository, resource not found exception, product service IMPL, and then product controller, global exception handling, application.properties file, and here you can see quick test. So ChatGPT paid version has added all this extra information. So this we haven't seen in the free version of ChatGPT. Next, you can see notes and best practices followed. The paid version of ChatGPT also mention all the details like what are the best practices it has followed while generating the source code. Next, if you don't want to use Lombok and you want to use the Java records, then you can add the follow-up questions to the ChatGPT over here. That we have already done with the free version of ChatGPT. You can do the same with paid version of ChatGPT as well. Alright, so this is how we use this single prompt to build the CRUD REST APIs that follows the industry standard best practices. Okay, next if you want to create the CRUD REST APIs for other entity, for example order, then you can simply replace the entity name, field names and the URL, and you can go ahead and use the prompt. It's pretty simple, and with the help of ChatGPT you can save your time, boost your productivity, and you don't have to manually type the line by line code. So if you know already how to develop the CRUD REST APIs, then it is good idea that you can use the ChatGPT and you can get the source code from the ChatGPT and you can save your time and boost your productivity. And also you can speed up your work. Alright, I will see you in the next video.